My name's Greg Sherlock. I'm an architect with Populous. We're a global firm based in the United States, the UK, and Australia. And my marketing department forced me to give a little bit of pitch on the firm first, just so you get familiar with who we are. We've been around for 30 years, and we've done quite a bit of work. You can see some of the metrics. 3 Olympic stadiums. We're rated top 10 in fan experience for the last 10 years. 52 billion visitors have visited our events over the past 30 years. $30 billion in total construction. But I would say in the theme of things, we're kind of underdogs in a lot of ways in our market and architecture. Even though we cover the globe, we only have 500 architects, which is pretty small compared to some of our competitors. There's firms that we compete with head-to-head that may have, in the range of 2,000 to 3,000 architects. So we're all about innovation. That's something that we really build in our culture. Therefore, we're underdogs, but we're hungry, and I think that's what we have to do to stay on top of the market. These are just some accolades. You can read them. What I'm really here to talk about is sustainability. This is a subject that is kind of on the forefront of what we do. As architects, we don't build the buildings, but we design them, and we want to design them in a way that not only meets the immediate purpose, but has a legacy impact. At least that's the idea. And in my point of view, buildings have to be built to live on beyond their initial intended purpose. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about is, some ideas. And this presentation is really kind of I would say a look into my desk a little bit. There's a lot of ideas here that we don't have clients per se, but we are sort of thinking ahead about the future a little bit and using some platforms where we can sort of fast forward ahead a little bit and start to take a look at the future and what we see it looks like. And you'll see there's some fun little projects in here, and I think at least they'll hopefully expand your imagination a little bit about what assembly buildings might look like in the future. So this is a rather awful image, but I think it kind of speaks to the idea of buildings that have been built in the last 50 years in a lot of ways, and of course there's been a lot of progress that this is not emblematic of every building in the world, but fundamentally the venues that we get into, the purpose is really specifically given to us, handed to us, is it's going to serve a certain purpose. And in a lot of ways, it sort of ends up with sort of a lifeless legacy, if you will. It starts out with, I call it the honeymoon, where it serves its purpose really well in the beginning, but as time goes on, the usage starts to sort of fade away. It's in some ways a bit of a trend. So this is what we're trying not to do in the future. And ironically, there's still a lot of venues being built around the world that are somewhat lifeless, in terms of their legacy, and don't really look ahead to what might be opportunities to manifest its use into other purposes. So this is kind of where, an indication of, the way we see it, that, buildings must be thought about as venues which should support all kinds of different opportunities, not just the specific sport. It's been tailored or designed to from the get-go. This happens to be the London Olympic, the main venue in London that we designed. And there's a pretty good legacy story. This idea came up it's about 10 years old, so in some ways it's kind of old hat. And it was a bit of a counterpoint to the Olympic venues that we'd seen in the past. Not to be condescending, but the Beijing Bird's Nest, fantastic piece of architecture. It's a really inspiring building, but it's empty. It's a big, 80,000 seat venue that's empty. And what we're really focused on, and I'm hearing this echo in the different disciplines that interrelate to the kind of environments that we're sort of projecting that people in the world want. And we're looking at our buildings, less as physical objects, even though that's what architects do, but really thinking about the fan experience and trying to get into a better understanding of the context of what a visitor really wants in these environments. It's not so much about the architecture in the truest sense of, is the building beautiful? Does it have correct proportions? Are the materials state of the art? But we're looking at it from a perspective of, what do the fans want? And what we find is what the fans want is a social experience. They want to be with their friends. They want to have a good time. And we're looking at, okay, how can we sort of encourage that kind of activity to occur within our venues? So it's really flipping the mindset of what most architects are taught and how we think, and reversing it. And so it's trying to understand how emotions are connected to what we see and feel. It's not easy. And then just to sort of support this a little bit, I dug up some facts. They're from Price Waterhouse. There's $146 billion in revenue in assembly venues, and it's showing signs of a 4% increase per year. So 50 billion in the last 10 years certainly indicates that it's going to continue to proliferate forward. And this is just a breakdown of the revenues. You can see by region how that 146 billion is sort of broke down. The U.S. is pretty strong because it has strong professional markets that really do drive revenue in sort of the broadcasting. So I guess what I want to say is, we know that broadcast and technology advancements that we've been discussing here is really on the forefront, and it's creating a lot of interest in sporting events, and it's creating changes in lifestyles as people are sort of affiliated with the notion of sports and healthy lifestyles. So we also know that this means an explosion in the demand. So it suggests that the future means there's going to be more venues built. And I'm happy to see that the future is bright. So the question is, how do we design buildings for the future? And how do we design them sustainable? So my theory is, and again, this is sort of on the boards, is that the venues have to be flexible. They have to be designed in such a way that they can transform. And transformation is sort of a broad term. It can mean a lot of different things. But I'm going to show you some examples of what I think this might look like. The London Olympics, again, 10 years ago, is a great example of transformation. Had a wonderful legacy sort of notion behind it. And from the get-go, the London Olympics was chosen in a side of London that was deprived. It was an old industrial area. It was highly polluted. There was a waterway that went through it. So the whole Olympic Village was set on top of this wasteland, if you will, and it was transformed into a park. So what was left, during the Olympics, basically all the venues were temporary to some extent. Totally recyclable venues. And after the event left, the scene is over, the city is left with the park. So it regentrifies a region of the city that was once decayed and brings back to life a tired part of the city. Just going to fast forward. And what was really profound about this design concept from our perspective as a stadium was the fact that it was designed to actually be dismantled. And that's not an easy thing to do. It was originally built, it was designed to hold 80,000 seats, even some more than that for the opening ceremonies. So the whole concept is based on a stadium, and I'm specifically talking about the upper tier. So the upper tier can be dismantled. The seats are all removed, and it's carted away and recycled, reused and formed into something else. So what it left was a much smaller venue, a 20,000 seat stadium that suited what looked like to be the nature of the need for that particular district within London. So it was very transformable in its notion. And here's another example, and that's the way this is going to go. I'm just citing examples, and I'm just trying to stretch your imagination a little bit. This is an MLB, Major League Baseball project in Florida, Marlins, and this concept was 10 years ago as well. And it was, of course, built for the Miami Marlins, so it was a baseball-centric client, but has a very highly transformable kind of solution. It has a retractable roof, and it has a retractable outfield wall, which you can see. That retractable wall is basically sheets of glass that slide on rollers, which open up, give the building sort of the feel of an open-air ballpark, and this is Miami. And it sort of focuses a view of the city, so it sort of brings the city into the venue. And I have a little bit of video here, and I'm going to sort of talk through it. There's no sound to it, but it'll sort of show you the notions of some of the transformable content within the architecture that we embodied. There we go. This venue replaced the Orange Bowl, so we took, basically we removed a building that was essentially falling down and replaced it with a venue. So this video will begin to sort of articulate some of the transferable features. And again, it was built very specifically for baseball, so you know, I think if I was to say our own criticism would be that we probably should have pushed or forged harder on the client to say, let's think about these features and allow this building to do more than just baseball. And baseball is kind of a unique building, and it's a big challenge in a lot of ways because the volume is pretty massive. The baseball can come off the bat, and it's a pretty tall trajectory that you have to sort of conform to make that game playable within the MLB standards. So the roof moves in 3 panels. It's like 12,000 tons of steel, and what's ironic here, it's in a hurricane zone. So a lot of very interesting engineering tactics are used here to create a building that's highly transformable. And here's sort of the result, a glamorous photo shot, of course, and we sort of use the roof of the park panels as to form sort of a grand entry plaza. When the roof is retracted, you go into the venue and you're exposed to a lovely baseball field. So here we go. We get a little bit looking into the future a little bit, and this is kind of like a what if. You know, do we need to build stadiums that are freestanding objects in the urban condition? Can the building really be considered a part of the fabric? So this idea is, rather than a stadium, an MLB stadium that performs or transforms technically, it's thinking about a building that's actually sited in a central park, for example, or in the center city of the building, and let the building just sort of morph into its condition. And I call it the living room of the city, is kind of the idea. And it's fundamentally, it's a park, so you can exercise on the roof, for example. It may have buildings that are cropping out of the ballpark, and maybe all of the support amenities at the ring of the seating bowl is not necessarily concessions and restrooms, maybe it's offices or apartments or something. So it's got this inside-outside sort of porosity or transparency. Does the building have to be a fortress? You know, can you sit in the park and watch the game? Why not? Could we have mass transit systems fly overhead? Could it really meet the center of the city? And instead of people hanging out in their apartment watching TV, watching the game, they come down to the Central Park and actually live in the environment in which the event takes place. And can we expose areas of the ballpark that are accessible to anyone, see the game from a totally different perspective versus your seat? And this is getting into the notion of creating those social kind of experiences that people want, getting close to the action, close to the players, seeing the game from a totally different point of view. And can we embed technology? You know, of course. I think there's a phenomenal amount of opportunities to take on technology within these venues. Can we see the game from a different perspective? And we're looking at Google Glass as some opportunities to bring that information and content from a different perspective. So here's another idea, and it's again pretty esoteric, and it sort of dawned on me. We do a lot of collegiate facilities in the U.S., and collegiate football in the United States is huge. There's some very big venues, numerous facilities that are 80,000 up. They're big venues, and they're what I call they're kind of lifeless, right? They only serve a purpose of 10 events a year, and they're definitely the heart of many campuses in the U.S. And this idea could be transplanted anywhere. And here's sort of an example. This is a figure ground of any collegiate campus USA. And you can look in Europe, you can look in Mexico and find sort of the same patterns. And the big octagonal box in the center, that's the scale of a venue. It's a huge footprint. And the olive green color, that's the open space for the students. So that's really where the students engage the campus. So what I said to myself is, why can't the central quad, or the central piece of the campus, actually be the venue? And does it have to be elite sport does it have to be an elite football game for a performance to take place? So why not put the venue in place in the central quad of the campus? And as the campus grows, think about the growth of the building to complement the classrooms, if you will, to actually form as the viewing platform onto the field of play. I'm showing football here, but it could really be anything. So that's kind of the idea. It's a sort of a non-stadium, if you will. It doesn't really exist as a stadium. The buildings on the periphery sort of perform as the viewing platforms, but they also perform as the laboratories for the students. So fundamentally, the students are the performers. And this is sort of my prediction that education will change in the future. Students will no longer be taught subjects. They'll be trained to perform. So fundamentally, every student is an athlete. And the performance stage is the campus itself. So there's the transformation, from a outdoor classroom transforms into a stadium, a venue that sees an event. And so here's another idea. This one is sort of looking at, what else beyond sports could there possibly be that we need facilities for. Gaming is huge, particularly in China. We see just proliferation of gaming as sort of a sport in a lot of ways. So we came up with this idea of, could there be an arena that was transformable? And the thought is that the players are in these modules that are sort of robotically released out of their modules and put into the center stage and compete. These are the modules. The building might be a series of modules. Another thought I wanted to plant, and we're doing this, and it's really fascinating to me. The Super Bowl in the United States it's a huge event. The Super Bowl's on Sunday, but fans come to these events 7 days in advance. So it's a huge opportunity to create a venue that's not about the stadium, it's really about the city. In this case, we portrayed Miami, coastal city on the beach. Can we transform that city to really celebrate that event, to elongate that, to create those broadcast impressions that are needed to proliferate what the users or what the fans would like to see. And it obviously would need to speak to the place. Miami's a port town, so can we celebrate the venues as a part of that and really, really sort of bring on that content as part of the development. And this is sort of spontaneous. It comes for 7 days and goes away. All right, so here's another idea, and this is a little more technical in nature, but in these venues, the problem for the most part is, in particularly bigger venues, is that fans are too far away from the action. Of course, the field defines the size of the seating areas, and can we transform the seating areas? And I'll show you a video here in a second here, what this might possibly look like. And this has been done. There's examples of this, but can it be done to another degree? So there's a video here I'd like to put up. And this video sort of takes on numerous different configurations for athletic events, and it could go on and on. There could be 100 different examples, but after my experience with Miami, I sort of saw that the engineering techniques and the mechanizations and the structural systems that support that really is limitless if you really start to put your head around it. And so could we literally start to move seating sections? And you would have to imagine this inside an envelope. Perhaps it has a retractable roof associated with it, but can the seating sections literally be mechanized at the push of a button and change configurations so that the fans are brought closer to the action and expands out to sort of form the next sort of scale of field necessary out to soccer, which is one of the largest. So, I think it's quite viable to think of these buildings as transformable in the way that there's a technique that actually moves the architecture. And baseball, of course, is a very unique configuration. It's more of a square compared to a football pitch, which is more rectilinear in nature, but this idea sort of captured those configurations from football to baseball, and starts to put this into place. It's somewhat rational, I think. It's taking all the parts and pieces that are there, using them once. It's not, tearing the section down and replacing it. It's moving all the pieces to hinge into a configuration that supports the event. And number 8 here, another idea, and this was me dreaming on my kitchen table a little bit, and it's kind of out there, but I thought about it, and it's like, could we design a stadium that floats? So could we design a stadium that's sort of modular in effect, and the modulars sort of interconnect and dock in various configurations, anywhere from maybe 2 baseball pitches to a smaller tennis kind of situation, to a larger soccer venue, to maybe even horse racing or something, and it floats to the city. So I thought, it had a lot of opportunities, because then you would just build one stadium or one construction piece, and it floats to various regions. Of course, it wouldn't be practical here in Mexico City, but there's a lot of wonderful port towns, and you can kind of imagine this venue sort of floating in place. And I call it the Blossom because it actually, the idea is that it retracts, so it has a sort of a telescopic situation to it. So it's kind of a kinetic piece of sculpture in a lot of ways. So each time it docks, it could be configured into a variety of different configurations that maybe speaks to the location in which it's docked. So it could be a coastal location, could dock to an urban condition, could dock onto a delta or something. So the building just speaks to its location a little bit through its kinetic or transformational movement. And here's the final idea. There's a video associated with this one, and this one is thinking about one of the problems we have with arenas. Arenas are highly flexible venues. They're great for entertainment. venues, concerts, and whatnot. They're great for basketball and hockey. But the challenge is the size of that doesn't necessarily complement the specific venue that's been assigned to the arena. So we came up with this idea of essentially it's sort of a floating ceiling. You can kind of see what happens. So it's got two tiers. You know, could we drop the ceiling down so that it basically shuts down the upper deck, and it just really brings the capacity down to a more intimate condition for basketball. Could expand out to hockey, back to basketball, and you know, could the ceiling continually, again, sort of morph in condition to sort of form a more intimate concert venue. And this is a pretty simple tactic, I would imagine. You know, it's a floating ceiling of panels that are on a pulley system, something, and to me that would be a real sustainable solution. You know, it's really creating that kind of added usage to these venues that wasn't originally intended, but that's the name of the game in the future, in my opinion. Thank you very much.